Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Expanding the Conversation with Kofi and Richard. Uh, this week we wanted to touch a little bit on something that I came across recently in reading a book called Grit, and it talks a little bit about hope and the role that hope plays in uh, sort of helping us create the lives that we lead, and to continue to wake up and put our best foot forward despite setbacks and challenges. And we wanted to talk a little bit about what does hope mean? What does hope mean to us? How do we think hope factors into our society, and kind of uh, how do we get people on a large scale to be more hopeful? Because I think we'll dive into a little bit to what having hope means, and how it drives your actions and your enthusiasm and your optimism. And so I think this will be a great conversation, as we sort of try to dissect what hope is and what it means to all of us. So I'll let Kofi kick us off.
All right. Well, I know. Welcome everybody. Yeah, Richard. I'm glad actually that you brought this topic up because I think that quite often we live in a world where there is a lot of hopelessness, and particularly I think given the fact that we are in a pandemic as well, I think sometimes people can feel a sense of hopelessness when you imagine how many people are probably locked up at home and maybe bored out of their minds, and they're a little concerned about where the world is going and if things are going to change. And then you hear a lot of stories about the end of the world, or you hear stories about how bad things are, and people can feel a sense of hope. I remember talking to a friend of mine when I said, look, I think you have to brace yourself for maybe the next 5 years or so to just adapt to this new sort of situation that we found ourselves in here with this pandemic. And I think for some people, just trying to think about that can bring a sense of hopelessness, as if, if I go out there, I'm going to get infected and things are going to be bad. So I think we live in a world where hopelessness is always walking the hallways of our civilization, and so we have to make this really big effort to continue hope, because I think there's a huge challenge, right? If you lose hope, I think for a lot of people, right, that's kind of a really bad place to be. And you know a number of people sometimes may even consider you know really bad really bad actions, once they've lost hope, and we really don't want to be in that position. So I'm happy that you're raising this topic. I'm sort of willing and sitting here and wanting to learn a little bit about what you've written in the book, and I'd certainly like to hear that. A lot of my learning and teaching on the concept of hope, also stems from the concept of faith and stems from my own faith, and teaching over time on first, having something to believe in that's beyond ourselves, and then placing that hope, in something that's higher than us. But that isn't to say, however, when you translate that into a more of a personal thing, and sometimes even more practical, that we have to have a sort of belief or hope, even in our own actions and in the things that we do, that they will stimulate and bring about sort of the things that we are going after, right? That once there is life, I always remember growing up and hearing this: once there is life, there is hope. Once there is life, there is hope. That's something I was raised to believe. But I'm willing to. I want to sit and hear a little bit about this book. I think you should tell people a little bit about the book, sort of what you've been learning there, and we can have a good conversation on this subject that I think people can benefit from.
Yeah, so I'm still reading the book, but it's a book called Grit by Angela Duckworth. And you know, there are different studies that people undertook to really understand what is it that um, makes some people sort of do a little bit more and do a little bit better, and sort of sometimes seem like they have an advantage.
Right.
And it sort of breaks down different components of what those people do, and how that sort of feeds into who they become in the end. And as I was reading it, and as I brought this up to you as a topic for us to discuss, I always think about sort of our own lives, right? And we've all been surrounded by people in the same circumstances, sometimes in different circumstances, better circumstances, worse circumstances, but somehow or the other, the outcome varies, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's sort of what the focus is. So, for example, you said it's easy right now for most of us to look at what's going on in the world, a pandemic that we don't know when it's going to end. You know, we've got
Right.
the U.S. elections, which has got its own drama to it, right? The Norway elections, which had its own drama to it. And I think if you consume a lot of news, you generally it's not hard to be hopeless, right? It's not hard to struggle with having some hope that um, that life will be better, right? Or that it'll be great. But at the same time, I think one of the things I realized, especially with COVID, is that they are people that I speak to that will have an incredible year this year, right?
Right.
Despite COVID. And there's something that I think drives that. And it's not just, personal luck and circumstances. There's something else that sort of fuels that. And I think it's hope, and I struggle to put sort of a true definition of what hope is, right?
Right.
In its sort of its purest sense, but I think it's sort of this conviction that I can wake up tomorrow and work towards creating a better day, a better life for myself, right? Sort of um, somewhat of an optimism that through my actions I can create a result, and therefore I have hope to wake up to. Because I believe that if you do that, and there's a line here, I'm gonna try to read it word for word, because I couldn't remember it off the top of my head. But it says, when you keep searching for ways to change your situation for the better, you stand the chance of finding them. When you stop searching, assuming they can be found, you guarantee they won't. And so
Right.
the way I kind of interpret that, and I'm still reading the book, so I've got a little ways, I'm a little past halfway. But the way I interpret that is if you wake up and feel like there is no hope, and if you feel hopeless, then chances are you're going to stop searching for the things that will really have the ability to change your life, right? And so I think this is sort of that's sort of the first thing I think I'd highlight, that you've got to wake up every day and believe that the opportunity to create a better today exists. And
Yes.
that's sort of the starting point. Because if you start from there, then you're gonna seek what's the next action you can take in order to create that. So that's sort of like the first element of it, that sort of resonated with me a little bit, from reading the book so far.
Yeah. No, no, that's kind of solid. I think as I said, the way one of the ways that I've thought about it, right, and I think you're putting it out here is that um, this idea of sort of faith and hope, that goes together. Faith being sort of that bigger, aspect that you have resolved, right, is the right thing, and so you've put your faith in the thing that you think is right, um, and now you've got a series of things that you hold fast to, a series of values that you hold fast to, and then you use your hope to act on that. And so hope here, as I understand it, is an action that you're taking to go after the things that you believe to be right. And because you've already believed those things are right, and those things are attainable, and those things are worth going after, you don't simply say that they are, but you actually act on them. And that until you act on them, right, you don't really engage your faith. Well, you don't engage hope. So hope has to be something, as you, I think, as you're saying, is that you get up every day and you engage it, and you take action to go after what you believe, because you already believe that they're right. You believe that they're justified, and you believe that these are the things that I certainly want to go after. And you allow and you practice hoping, right? It isn't a wish, right? Because sometimes people wish for things, and sometimes people say, well, I wish, the term we use in Ghana, right? Wishy-washy. Um, which is to say that, it's now, maybe it's up today, maybe it's down tomorrow, but there's a sense of self-discipline, right, that goes into this practice of belief and this practice of hope, that you are going to exercise on a daily basis. And so you say, for example, I set myself a goal, and I believe that that's the thing that I want to accomplish, and I believe that this is valuable, and I believe that this is the right thing to do. And here it is that I've now set that goal, and every day I get up and I go after it, because it is my hope, which is my action, in order that I'm driving, sorry, I'm taking action to drive and move closer and closer to the thing that I absolutely want to accomplish. So, in that sense, I believe, yes, hope is, key and important in going after the things that we want.
Yeah, I like how you put that, because it is a practice, right? One of the things that I think happens oftentimes, because some of these things, I think it's sort of like we oscillate, right, between a sense of hope and a sense of hopelessness. And sometimes that's a product of what happens, right? We wake up, we're excited, we're energized, and we go out and we put our best foot forward in doing something, we just don't get the result we want. And so it's easy to say, okay, well, I was hopeful yesterday when I did my best today, but now I'm done with hope, right? Like,
Right.
what sense does it make? And one of the things that I think, one of the things that the book touches on is sort of how subjective our experiences are. So one of the things you find with people that exhibit hope on a regular, consistent basis, it's sort of the way they're able to subjectively, in a positive manner, interpret when things don't go according to plan, right?
Right.
And I think that's a significant component of it, because oftentimes you can hear two people talk about the same thing. So for example, like you can hear somebody talk about COVID and sort of the dire effects that it's had in their life, and then you could talk to somebody else and say, well, yeah, like COVID hit me hard, it sort of displaced me, but here's all the things that I did with the extra time now that I have, or
Right.
whatever it is, right? People planted gardens, some people started exercising more, some people connected with their family more. And so the idea is that, like, we've got that sort of subjectivity to interpret things that happen in our lives, and if we choose to interpret it in a positive manner and sort of take the learning that we get from it, then it's easy to fuel hope, and to act with a sense of hope day in, day out, versus if we see
Yeah.
it, well, we tried our best and we're just, because one of the things that the book touches on is sort of the difference between those that are hopeful and those that don't have as much hope in life is the fact that that you have these experiences, but not only that you have these experiences, but the fact that you believe that you have control over them, right? And so if you feel like you have no control, it's easy to say, well, I've done my best and it's not good enough. I didn't get what I want, and so therefore, I don't have any control over the outcome, and so therefore you lose that sense of hope. So I think understanding that there is a lot in life that we do have control over, and if you wake up and sort of view it with that context that we do have some control over it, I think it's easier to practice hope on a
Right.
regular basis. And it's not always going to be easy, right? Like, we know this, like there are going to be times where you wake up and it's just like, even some of the gurus, right, that that sort of are always in that great mental space, they have moments where they wake up and they just feel like today is not the day, right? And I think you've got to ride those days out, but continue to wake up with sort of that vision that I do have some control, that if I continue
Yeah.
to act with a sense of hope, then I can actually create a result.
Right.
And in essence, then create a better life.
Right. No, so there's you know, the old very famous prayer, right? It says, God grant me the
Serenity to
courage, right, to change the things I can, and the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change, and wisdom to know the difference. And I think the the reason that is powerful is because in life there are always things that we have control over, and then there are things that we do not have control over. And quite often we have control over our actions, our very own actions. We don't have control over the actions of other people. We don't have control quite often over, you know, what happens in the world. Um, but we have control over our actions. And I think you're right, right, that the knowing the difference is really important, and being able to act on the things that we have control over, and in a sense doing, you know, our part, right, making sure that we are doing, you know, what we can do to make things better. And I think that's really, really important because, as you say, it's very easy to become frustrated when you feel like you don't have control over things. It's very, very easy to lose hope because you feel like you have no control over your own life or over what's going on. But I think you're right. I think in many situations we have to take stock and assess and ask ourselves, what are the things that I can do, right, to affect and change my circumstances? And then those are the things that I change, those are the things that I do. And then I hope and I move towards, like, right, I'm acting on these things in order to bring the change, the desired change that I may be looking for. And then, of course, as we said before, it's really good, right? I think it's really good to have a kind of bigger belief system, right? That we've talked about sometimes, that really helps to reinforce that, right? You know, as someone who sort of, you know, uh, you know, embrace and have seen how folks, you know, talk about their Christian faith, for example. You know, there's a particular scripture that talks about, you know, all things work together for good to them who love God and are called according to his purpose. And imagine believing that, right? Imagine feeling, as we've talked about, right? Imagine the sense of having someone even bigger on your side, right? Imagine having friends and family on your side. Imagine having, you know, a support system, right? That really helps to drive up, you know, our hope level, and really takes it to another level, right? Because we feel like we've got people who are supporting us as well. And not only am I trying to struggle with my own circumstances and take control, but I feel like there are other people around me who are hoping for the same thing, but who are there to support me and help me make the changes that I'm looking for as well.
Yeah, I agree with you there, Kofi. I think we've touched on a few things there. That is helpful. I think it's certainly. I always believe that when you're engaging things and you sign other people up with you, then it's often easier to do that, right? So, you know, I've had situations in my life. I think I've mentioned a few to you, where it's like, yeah, boy, I can't believe this happened to me, but it did. And you know, like having good friends that can be there to say, well, yeah, don't worry about it, like it'll be all right. I mean, it's you know, it
Right.
happens. It's not worth it to sort of lose hope over it. And so I definitely agree with that there. So I feel like we've touched on a good bit there. um i I I sort of want to maybe recap that, you know, you have to
Yeah.
continue waking up feeling like, um, there is the opportunity to create a better life. You know, be positively subjective in your interpretation of things that don't go your way, because if you see the learning in it and if you interpret it in a positive manner, I think it allows you to sort of continue to keep the hope alive. And hope is an action, right? It's not,
I
it
think
might
so.
seem
I
like
agree.
something, right, that you that it's a mental thing, but it's also an action, right? Like we've got to go out and continue to search and pursue those things that will create the value in our lives. And I believe it from sort of my personal experience that it happens, right? Sometimes when it's unexpected. The other thing too, I think it sort of just crossed my mind is when we go out into the world and exhibit hope, we fuel the hope of others as well, right? We might not realize that. And so, sort of the candle lighting multiple candles, I think it's the same concept,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
You know, if you feel like sometimes you're in a place where you don't feel as hopeful about the positive, the potential positive outcomes in your life, I think remember that as you go out there, you're actually, you're helping other people be a little bit more hopeful of their personal circumstances as well. So
Yep.
I'll end on that note.
Cool.
I know I'd love to hear other people's, personal point of view on hope, and maybe some of those people that um, sort of seem to rise up every time they fall and just continue going. And we wonder if they've got maybe they have the superpower of hope. I don't know. Maybe that is a thing, but it'd be interesting to hear some people's stories on it.
Yeah, man. No, that's great. Again, thanks for bringing up this topic. I trust and hope that people will benefit from this conversation. I have in my, as I said, in my own life, and there are times when, yeah, you just feel like hope was slipping away, but you reach deep down and try to, find that hope again to push through, to make changes and overcome circumstances in your own life. So, uh, yeah, reach out, and thanks for expanding the conversation with us, guys.
Yep. Thank you guys. Expand the conversation.